Next, we will be talking about the structure and function of blood. What make up blood? What is blood? What are the components of blood? Blood is about 55% plasma. Then it contains white blood cells, or WBCs, red blood cells, RBCs, platelets, clotting factors. All of these three types of blood cells consists of 45% of the blood volume. 55% of the blood volume is plasma. If you were to separate this out, if you were to put it in a centrifuge, what you would find was plasma would float to the top. It's the lightest. That's about 55% of what you find. Then you would get less than 1% band of white blood cells and platelets, and then followed by about 45% of the blood volume as red blood cells. Again, here's another illustration. 55% of this, 55% of this plasma is water, proteins, and dissolved nutrients. 45% of it is red blood cells, with about 1% of that being platelets and white blood cells. Platelets exist in a higher number than white blood cells do. As well, there are 5 types of white blood cells, but that's not particularly important for Science 30. Here is an example of a red blood cell. They can, with platelets here and white blood cells is this fuzzy rough cell on the side. Plasma is about 8% water, or 8% dissolved ions, 92% water. It contains proteins such as fibrinogen that help in blood clotting, as well as antibodies. It contains glucose, vitamins, minerals such as calcium, chloride, magnesium, sodium, bicarbonate, all of those things that are needed to keep pH of your body normalized and act as buffers, as well as for nerve impulses and other cellular function. It can also contains gases as well as waste products produced by cells. Examples of blood cells. This is a false color, sort of a stained picture, so the red blood cells here are white. They're here. The purple big ones in the middle are white blood cells, and the small ones are platelets. Erythrocytes are sort of frisbee-shaped or donut-shaped. They're biconcave. They have no nucleus when they mature because the purpose is not to produce more red blood cells. Their whole purpose is to carry oxygen. They have a short lifespan. They live for about 120 days or 4 months and contain a molecule called hemoglobin, which is the pigment that makes blood red, and it also is designed to carry oxygen from your lungs to the rest of your body. Erythrocytes, what are their function? Red blood cells carry oxygen to tissues. They exchange carbon dioxide to be released from the lungs. When somebody is anemic, that means that they have a red blood cell deficiency. That means that there's not enough iron in their blood, and they have a decreased oxygen. They have decreased oxygen transport to cells, which would result in low energy levels. Where are red blood cells formed? They're formed by stem cells in red bone marrow. So the mature red blood cells don't reproduce, but this red bone marrow produces more red blood cells. So this is beyond a little bit of the scope of Science 30, but you need to know that all blood red cells come from bone marrow. So a stem cell reproduces, and it produces red blood cells, or erythrocytes. It produces platelets as well as white blood cells and plasma cells. So from one red bone marrow, you get all of the cells in your blood. So you get red blood cells, you get white blood cells, and you get platelets. Leukocytes are also known as white blood cells. They there's one white blood cell for every 700 red blood cells. They have a nucleus, which is the largest of. They have a nucleus. It's the largest of the blood cells. Their goal is to swallow up or engulf invading cells through this process called phagocytosis. So it eats invading cells. It digests microorganisms and forms pus. Pus is used by white blood cells. It contains dead tissue and bacteria. Some white blood cells make antibodies that result in an immune response that allow your body to react more swiftly in case of a second infection. They also come from stem cells like the red blood cells do. Platelets are small, they're fragile, they contain special proteins called thromboplastin. They initiate clotting. They use up some of the plasma or calcium in plasma to start making the blood thicker. They also originate from stem cells like red blood cells and white blood cells. Here is a picture of clotting endothelial cells, or there's a break in your blood vessel. What ends up happening is blood starts rushing out. These platelets release clotting factors. They start to keep the blood cells back, and they start to fill in the gap that break has caused. So platelets hit the rough edge of a ruptured blood vessel and accumulate, release thromboplastin and calcium ions. Thromboplastin and calcium convert fibrinogen to fibrin. Fibrin is a stretchy network that traps the red blood cells. So that is how clotting works. So here is a picture of fibrin. Again, this is a false color picture. This is they've gone in and they've recolored it. So here are your platelets, here are your red blood cells, and here's your fibrin. There are 4 different